And then the other one, the one that really gave me fuel and also broke my heart, was a big name editor that my agent said she would love to have worked with, and she would have been perfect for my book. Her feedback was, hey, you guys, I love Denise's writing. I love this story. I went to pitch it at my editorial meeting and I couldn't convince everyone else. So I'm sorry, we have to pass on this one. I mean, it was heartbreaking at the time, but ultimately it also just gave me fuel. Like, well, if there was an editor who loved my story and she was willing to go to bat for it, then I'm a writer. I'm a writer. Like, this is, my words have value. It's not just me in my pajamas at home, you know, wearing writer on my sweatshirt and calling myself a writer. It actually was heartbreaking, but it kept me going.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 377 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with Denise Massar, who you may recognize from April 2021 episode 188, where we talked a lot about adoption. Now, Denise Massar is a writer, an adoptee, and a mom via birth and adoption. Her essays have been published in HuffPost, Writer's Digest, Mutha Magazine, Raise Magazine, An Injustice, and she's a recurring guest blogger for Jane Friedman. Denise's memoir, Matched, is about the 9 months she spent obsessively searching for a baby to adopt, the 9 potential birth moms she met on that journey, and how, in a twist of fate, her son's birth mom led Denise to the one person she thought she'd never meet, the woman who gave birth to her. We talk about Denise's new book, her more than 10-year path towards getting it published, the obsessive dreams that she had about traditionally publishing it and how that pivoted, and so much more. And all of that is coming up later in this episode. But first, let's hear a word from this episode's sponsor.
Ready to elevate your writing career? Join the Cruising Writers Group Sailing the Caribbean from Galveston on February 22nd to March 1st, 2025. This time, we're focused on indie authors, with special guests Mark Leslie and Aaron Wright leading a deep dive into the world of self-publishing. You'll come away with invaluable insights, but also great memories as you connect with other writers and explore charming ports of call in Roatan, Honduras, Costa Maya, Mexico, and Cozumel. Visit cruisingwriters.com to book your spot today.
And now for comments from recent episodes. Over on Twitter, also known as X, the Edwin Downward left the comment, "The latest Stark Reflections made me aware I hadn't signed up for Mark's mailing list and therefore missed his question about what to call a group of editors." There were a lot of great answers, of which I like Commission of Editors the most. Yeah, that was great. All of those amazing suggestions for what we should call editors. Love that interactivity. Loved it so much. And I'm glad that that was a reminder to you to sign up for the newsletter. Of course, I'll include a link to the Stark Reflections newsletter in every episode show notes so people can find it when they come to starkreflections.ca. But it also reminds me, and I want to thank you for this, Edwin, is I need to adapt more of the highlights from this podcast into the Stark Reflections mailing list to ensure that those who aren't able to listen to the podcast regularly can still benefit from the wisdom of the awesome guests I have on the show, because there's cool tidbits and things that we pull out of there, and maybe I can, Reader's Digest them into something small and helpful to send off to writers. Because again, trying to help everyone else out, trying to lift each other up, that's kind of what this is all about. So if you want to leave your own comments, you can leave them over at starkreflections.ca. For any episode, you can leave them at youtube.com, Mark Leslie Lefebvre, where I post the audio only for most episodes, and very occasionally some videos from the podcast. But of course, I'm behind and don't have a lot of time nor organizational skills to get a lot of those edited, as I do edit every single episode of the show. But I do want to thank my patrons who support this podcast over at patreon.com, because the patron support helps kind of compensate me for a lot of the time that I put into this podcast, which is several hours a week. And I want to thank you guys so much for your support, because it means a lot. And your interactivity means a lot as well. It's kind of like a payment to my soul, if I can get a little woo-woo. Oh, come on, a little woo-woo. I'm always woo-woo, but that's okay. You know that if you're a regular listener. But anyways, just want to thank you guys for your comments, and obviously thank everyone who supports the podcast at patreon.com/starkreflections. And of course, thank you to all my listeners. It does mean so much to me that you are downloading and listening to the episodes, as well as when I get a chance to see you in person. I love to hear from you and even hear your own reflections on what you're thinking about the various awesome guests, and I believe awesome content as well, that I put out on the podcast, even when I do those solo shows. So thank you guys so much for all of that feedback. Now, just a quick personal update. For my personal update, a lot of the focus, of course, as it has been the past couple weeks, is going to be about my Kickstarter and some updates. I am currently, as the recording of this, I'm sitting at $3,160 Canadian, which is 210% of my goal, which was $1,500 Canadian. And I wanted to remind listeners, this is running till September 10th, 2024, and there are actually rewards specifically for authors. Now, the reason that the rewards aren't visible on the front page of this Kickstarter is advice I got from the masters, people who do excellent at Kickstarter. It's, you want to have, 9 or fewer rewards on the main page. And because the main reward, the main project is a collection of horror stories, I wanted all those rewards to be related to horror and related to the book One Hand Screaming and associated things. So I have a whole bunch of other add-ons that you can get to if you select like digital reward, like high five, or just, I think you can submit, like, donate $1. And then you get the possibility of add-ons when you get to the next screen. And there are add-ons specifically for authors that I wanted to highlight here because they're a pretty good deal. One of them, for $8 Canadian, which is just under $6 US, you can get 3 of the books from my Stark Publishing Solution series. You can get the 7 P's of Publishing Success, an author's guide to working with libraries and bookstores, and Publishing Pitfalls for Authors. Now, those are valued at $14.97 US, and you can get them for $8 Canadian, or just about $6 US. That's the first and the best price reward. But for those who are interested in doing consulting with me, I normally charge $149 US for an hour. But I actually have a 2-hour package of that consulting, and you can do a 2-hour session, or we can do 2 separate 1-hour sessions. It's your choice, and you can get to decide that after the Kickstarter's over, and I can contact you and give you a form where you can book those things. That it is only $199 Canadian for 2 hours, so that works out to $148. So you're getting 2 hours for less than the price of 1 hour. And it's limited. There's only 100 available, and that's a virtual video chat. I record that for you. I give you a copy of the recording so you have that, and that's personalized one-on-one consulting with anything that you want to talk about related to writing and publishing. So that's a pretty good deal. The other deal is if you want to do more long-term coaching, like one-on-one coaching for a full year, well, we'll get together once a month for 12 months for a year, as well as ongoing messaging back and forth, kind of setting those goals and just checking in if you need that accountability partner to work with you. I'll do that for a full year for you for $1,000 Canadian, which is $750 US. Now that is valued at about $1,788 US. and $2,400 Canadian, and that's for a 12-month period. And again, that is also limited. There's a limited number of those. I think I can't remember if there's a dozen of those available, but there's just a few of those available if you're looking for that more one-on-one mentorship. The whole idea there is just offering a bit of a discount to people who support this over at on Kickstarter, and I wanted to make them more exclusive. So other exclusive things that have come in is I got more of the proofs back from two of the artists that I am working with, two of the artists and designers I'm working with, in terms of the full page color specs that are going into the deluxe limited edition faux leather bound, limited to 100 copy total edition of One Hand Screaming. But as other rewards get unlocked, or stretch goals, I should say, and I reached the $3,000 stretch goal, everyone who backed it I already sent a link to download a free short story and or audio version of that story, which it's roughly about 45 minutes of entertainment for you, so lots of just an extra bonus. And I've got some other stretch goals, and I'm going to unlock some additional fun rewards, because hey, it's more fun to throw in additional rewards. But the Kickstarter is all consuming, and it is preventing me from getting the work done that I need to do on let's say 4 other books that I slapped onto the back burner. But I got to remember this for next time. When you're doing a Kickstarter, it's pretty intense, and it's pretty all in, and there's very little room for other things. And so that's one of the challenges, just to remind you if you're thinking about doing that Kickstarter. But that's kind of it. Now, I'm doing later tonight, I'm recording this on Thursday the 29th, but I'm doing an open air market uptown Waterloo, where I'll be selling my books. And I am doing an event in Bayfield, of all places, which is near Goderich, Ontario, on Ontario's west coast. And I'm doing an all-day event there, where I've purchased a table. It's sort of it's like a witch-themed, witches and potions, etc. themed fair. And I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be an all-day event. It takes about an hour and 45 minutes to drive there and set up. And then I've got other things coming up, such as DreadCon, which is a horror conference that's taking place here, a horror event taking place in September and early September here in Waterloo, and I'm going to be all in on that. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in a future episode, to talk about some of the marketing I'm doing related to that, related to my release this fall for One Hand Screaming. But that's enough blathering from me. You want to hear from my guest, Denise Massar. So, after the bumper, that's exactly what you're going to hear. Hey, Denise, welcome back to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me.
So last time we spoke, we were talking about legacy of adoption, the fact that you and I are both adopted, the fact that you have adopted, and you were working on a book about it. But I think some things have changed in your literary world, haven't they?
Yes, they have, since we last talked. Yes.
So you had a big New York publisher offer you a 7-figure advance for this book, right?
That's it. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
that's
congratulations.
My dream come true.
Yes, awesome.
So I think the last time we talked, I was still at the part of my publishing journey where I was like, big 5 or die. Like that was my dream. I probably have had that dream since like I wrote my, first book in 5th grade. But then, I had an agent, and went out on sub March of 2020, which is hilarious.
Oh, perfect timing. Yeah, because timing. The literary world was just stampeding forward. Then they didn't cancel any books that year.
So, just classic timing. And, but the kind of interesting thing was my agent was like, well, maybe a lot of editors are at home reading more than they ever have. Like, who knows? Yeah. Let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
So we did. And, while my book didn't sell, we did get some really amazing feedback. And I'll tell you the 2 that will haunt me for the rest of my days. The first was an editor replied, hey, if you can sell this print to another editor, then I will take ebook. I'll buy ebook rights from you guys.
Okay.
So I was like, I don't, I never expected that. I didn't even know that was a thing, but it was, at least I took it as like, okay, like an editor actually liked my writing and wanted to buy it.
Right.
So that was a plus. And then the other one, the one that really gave me fuel and also broke my heart, was a big name editor that my agent said she would love to have worked with and she would have been perfect for my book. Her feedback was, hey, you guys, I love Denise's writing. I love this story. I went to pitch it at my editorial meeting and I couldn't convince everyone else. So I'm sorry, we have to pass on this one.
Oh, and that happens a lot in New York publishing where 8 editors get in a room and they each have only whatever so many spaces they have to fill and they have to fight for them. So that unfortunately happens all too often with some great books. So
Yeah. And I mean, it was heartbreaking at the time, but ultimately it also just gave me fuel. Like, well, if there was an editor who loved my story and she was willing to go to bat for it, then I'm a writer. I'm a writer. Like, this is, my words have value. It's not just me in my pajamas at home, you know, wearing writer on my sweatshirt and calling myself a writer. It actually was heartbreaking, but it kept me going.
right. So interesting. And the first publisher, it's rare. Publishers are usually so risk averse and so paranoid that they want all the rights and they don't split rights. It's very
Yeah.
rare, and it's usually a big name author that can negotiate. Oh no, you're only getting print rights. So that's a weird one, to be quite honest. If
Yeah.
someone else takes print, we'll take ebook. But usually the people who will take print will they'll demand the ebook rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah. I thought that was very odd too.
Yeah. So how did that go? So you had these two sort of near misses where there was interest from publishers. Obviously, stuff falls through as it always does, unfortunately, with some great titles that can't get published because they're
Yep.
limited.
Yep.
So what was the process then with your agent in terms of Denise deciding a different path?
She was fantastic. I mean, I fully expected to get dropped after that, after my book died on sub.
Right.
But because of the timing and because we got that encouraging feedback, she was like, you know what, and this is, I'll never forget, this was so funny to me. She said, the world of publishing is so incestuous. She said, let's change the title. Let's give it a year and let everybody, basically shake up the snow globe of publishing
Yeah.
and let everybody drop into their new titles. Because just because, you know, HarperCollins or whatever had a memoir that was similar that year, that agent could go somewhere else and, maybe they could pitch match. So we did that. We changed the title, which I desperately did not want to do, but we did, to something that was more descriptive of what was in the book. And then she very generously sent me out on sub again, another 40 editors, another, 6
Right.
months of being on sub.
Wow.
And my book died on sub again.
Right.
Yeah.
So you went back to the original title.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
wow. Okay. So you did that second round, which was worth a shot, right? Just in case. Because yeah, sometimes it's a case of the right book at the wrong time, or it's like, oh, we just published a memoir of
Yes, exactly.
motherhood. And I know your memoir touches upon multiple aspects, but oh, we just did adoption, or we just did motherhood, or we just did whatever.
So
So
many people said that, things like
yeah.
that. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's one of the sad things about traditional publishing, because when I started in the industry, there were 12 big publishers, and so an agent had a lot more wiggle room. And so each of those publishers was doing whatever 5 titles in of nonfiction memoirs. Now it's 5 publishers, and they've whittled it down, and they've basically killed and cut their budgets like crazy in such a way that's like, no, we're only doing one memoir a year now.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah,
And it's so hard as an author to hear like, oh, we did a book on adoption last year. And you have the hubris of like, but it wasn't like my story. You know?
yeah. No, and no, but and that they miss out on the nuances and the subtleties of,
Yeah.
yeah, we did a celebrity memoir. Well, no, this isn't a celebrity memoir. This
Yeah.
is, yeah, that is so true. That I think that's hurt the publishing industry more than anything, is the inability to take good books because of them gobbling themselves out. They're worried about cannibalism, and they've cannibalized themselves.
Yes,
Right.
yes. Well, and I think for somebody who's a memoir junkie like I am, and I don't want to say it as a blanket thing, South. I also think it can sound as like an excuse from a memoir writer, but memoir is for sure the hardest thing for a debut author to sell.
Oh,
Like,
for sure. Yeah.
because who gives a shit what Denise Massar's experienced when, Prince Harry is also going to tell you
Yeah,
about
or
something.
Beyonce had got a
Right.
hangnail. We want to read about that, right? Yeah.
Yes. So
Or,
yeah,
or reading about Prince Harry's penis, like which we all did.
we didn't want to, but it was too late by the time we did.
Yeah, it was like, oh my God, how many times is he going to say this?
Yes, yes.
But no, I get that. So okay, so you still had a great relationship with your agent, still lots of mutual respect there. How did that conversation go in terms of, okay, I'm gonna take a different path?
Yes. Well, it was, I knew that that was the end of our relationship. And at that point, I knew a really trusted mentor in publishing said to me, you know what? I think, Denise, I know it hurts that you didn't get the big five dream, but, um, you know, I've always thought that your manuscript is a university press book.
Okay.
I think you need to make that pivot. And so I was kind of nervous to tell my agent that I wanted to do that on my own. I wanted to write my own pitch and I wanted to pitch to university presses on my
Oh, you
own.
were gonna pitch to university presses without your agent.
Yeah, because most university presses don't require one. And I just, at that point, we had run our course, like both of us. So,
Yeah.
but before I even approached her with that conversation, she was like, hey, I'm moving on and I'm dropping it. But
Okay. You
it
can't
was,
break up with me. I'm breaking up with you. Okay.
I was thinking the same thing. I just didn't say it first.
That's right. I called this meeting to break up with you. No, but I mean, I'm sure it was mutually.
It was totally mutual respect. And,
Yeah.
I love your book and you treated me well. And thank you. Thank you. So it
Okay.
was, it was a good breakup. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess the thing is, spoiler alert, but the book is getting published. But I guess if it does really, 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 really well, it's a matter of calling up the agent saying, "Hey, maybe you can get the interest now that I can show them the sales."
Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, I have this dream, Mark. I won't do it. I mean, I might, who knows? I might be that level of petty, but one of the editors, one of the only editors, male editors that we submitted to came back with a feedback. And, sometimes Massar's rawness and her candor skews to the slightly unlikable. And it would be my dream for this book to do really, really well and be able to go back to him and say, main characters don't always have to be likable. And in a memoir, if they are, who wants to
Yeah.
freaking read that?
Yeah, yeah, we want to see the flaws. We want to,
Yes, for sure. We want to hate her for a minute because we're all like horrible at different times.
we want to go, don't do that. Oh, she did it.
Oh, she did it.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so all right, so you guys had an amicable breakup, and
Yeah.
then you decided that you were going to take the reins.
Yes. And then I spent probably like another 6 months submitting to university presses. And it was funny because I thought because they're so much smaller that they would be so much more responsive. But I found submitting to university presses was identical to querying. Like some of them would respond within an hour or two, like, oh, wow, with great feedback. And some never responded ever.
Right.
So that was really interesting to me because with the traditional publishers, they always did respond.
Yeah.
There was no, my agent never received, like, she never even got back to me. But with university presses, got some great feedback, some I never heard from. And then at the end of that, then that's at the end of that submission process, I was like, okay, well, what's going to happen now? It's up to me. What the next step is completely up to me.
Wow. Wow. So what did Denise decide?
Well, I had some help deciding, actually. I had the exact help I needed. I went through like a really scary health crisis with a long, boring story, but a lot of your listeners will probably be able to relate with a tumor that after many months and scary scans turned out to be benign.
Hmm.
But during that time, I did have to take it out, and it was lodged like between my jugular and my, I can't even think of the other one right now, carotid. So
Oh, no danger there if the cut
yeah,
goes the wrong way. Yeah.
just super super low key surgery. And when I was healing from that, it took about 4 weeks. I just remember like thinking, first of all, just thinking, I'm just happy to be here. And I don't,
Yeah.
nothing that mattered before matters in the same way.
Yeah.
But then when I started to come back to like, okay, reality and thinking about the future again, I was like, what do I actually want out of being a published author? I, because I thought when I started my book a decade ago, I wanted to be interviewed by Matt Lauer on the Today Show.
Okay.
That, yeah, today would be obviously Hoda and Jenna, but back in the day, I wanted to be interviewed and I wanted on Fresh Air and I wanted Terry Gross to find me absolutely charming.
Okay.
And I wanted a big, boozy, white, sparkly light book launch party where I could invite all my friends and family and, very David Foster Wallace 1990s book fest.
Okay.
And those are the three things I wanted when I started.
Okay.
Okay. But 10 years later, I've grown as an author, I've grown as a woman. And I was like, okay, what I actually want is I want my kids to see me finish this job. Like this book has been in their life, their entire life. I've
Right.
either, told them they can't bother me, I'm writing, or I've been talking about it at the dinner table, or, it's always been a fabric or a thread in the fabric of our lives. And so there's no way I could just shelf it. There's just no way. So for one, I wanted my kids to see me finish the job. Two, I wanted to still have that book party. And I thought to myself, all the well, actually, that same mentor I spoke about a minute ago, she told me, they don't do that anymore. Like you would have to be their number
Yeah.
one book. Like
Or
you are
yeah.
never getting a book party. Like,
Or unless you pay for it yourself.
yes, yes.
Okay.
So that's what I thought. And I was like, I can give parties. Like I give parties all the time, birthday parties, graduation parties. I will give myself a book party.
Right.
So that's where I landed. And so when I decided to publish the book myself, become an indie author, I was actually truly thrilled because I was able to change my title back and I was able to hire the designer for the cover that I wanted, which was an artist that I knew. And, I would have worked well with an editor and taken changes and suggestions, but I didn't have to go through that process. I had done that with my beta readers and I'd made a lot of changes and edits based on their feedback. And I was very happy to leave it where it was.
Right.
So yeah, it was a long journey to get there. But once I actually was an indie author, I was thrilled to be there.
Hmm. And I know the book is coming out in August of 2024.
Yep.
And at the point we're at right now is you pushed the publish buttons on various platforms for pre-order, but you haven't yet held the baby in your hands because it's probably not going to get there till tomorrow, right?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and I kind of wish we had waited to have this conversation just to see you holding and you're going to have to take pictures when you unbox it, right?
Yes. Oh, for sure. Absolutely, I will. Yes.
Okay. Because I mean I think that's the moment when it becomes real for you is holding that book in your hand. But I'm curious now that you're at this point, now that you're just on the cusp, what are you
Yes.
feeling?
I feel 75% like elated, like giddy, so excited because, and I think what really, really helped with this is I had 60 ARC readers. And so my baby actually went out into the world on July 1st to 60 readers.
Right.
And, it was incredible because all that personal, my memoir is so personal, and all that information went out. But because they were and I'm saying that in quotes because they're the most important people in my entire launch, but because they were my ARC readers, I didn't stay up sweating like, oh my God, everybody's going to be reading my memoir tomorrow.
Right. Right.
But slowly what has happened is through every possible different front, like Facebook, Instagram, text, emails, phone calls. My ARC readers have been like, oh my God, I've started your book last night. I'm on chapter 23. Like, I'm so obsessed. You're such a good writer. Like, I knew you would be, but I wasn't sure. And oh my God, I love your story. And I never knew all this. I'm learning so much. And so I have gotten so much good feedback, which is, I mean, that's author crack, right? Like, that's basically that. I can say that's honestly the whole reason I write is
Yeah.
to hear people say, me too, me too. I didn't know anybody else went through that. I
Right.
did that too. You never knew. I never told you, but I went through that too.
Yeah.
And so I'm 75% excited to get more of that and then to grow, closer to my readers. And then I'm 25% um, scared shitless because it is so personal.
Yeah.
And it was one thing to have it on the manuscript on my desktop for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing to have it out there for people to interpret however they're going to interpret.
And there's a lot of raw moments with your relationship with your husband, your relationship with the wanting to have a baby when things don't work out, and then the ups and downs and ups and honestly, every time you think it's going to be sunshine, you get another punch in the face. You
Yes.
know, and it
Yes.
just kept going. It's like, oh my God, give these kids a break. I mean, it's
Yes.
really raw, and you don't hold back on how you were feeling, which that must have been hard to relive all those times that you've gone through and reread and edited and adjusted over the years, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. The parts where I talk about meeting with all the birth moms and the potential birth moms and, desperately trying to find a baby to adopt, that was not hard to revisit. That just poured out of me. Like that was what made me sit down and write a book in the
But
first
that
place.
was a lot of work. I mean,
It was a lot of work.
a
Yes.
lot of I'm sort of legwork, but a lot of waiting, a lot of back and forth, a lot of missed meetings and just different things that
Yes.
happened, right? And where you're like, oh my God, you can sense the frustration. And
Yes.
yet you still get the commitment and the passion for
Yes.
this is going to happen. No matter how many times
Yeah.
they push me off the log, I'm going to get back up on it again.
Yes. And Mark, I appreciate you saying the commitment and the passion because that is a very sweet way to say I was completely obsessed. Like I was obsessed
Obsession
with,
is one word. I prefer passion.
yes.
But no, but the thing is you had this love that you wanted to give, and so
Yes.
that was part of it as well. But I mean, also you're on both ends of adoption too, which is somewhat rare.
Yes. Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's what I was going to say. The part that was harder to revisit for me, and I was like, ooh, wow, okay, I don't know if I want to share that, was when it wasn't even until I was actually writing my book that I realized, and I was writing about my own adoption, and I had never really considered before that since I didn't come home to my parents until I was 6 months old, I never really, honestly, until I was writing my book, thought, oh, well, where was I then for those 6 months? Oh, I was a foster kid. Like
Yeah,
I was in foster care. And I wouldn't have had the confidence to say that 10 years ago. I would have
right,
probably hidden that information as if maybe that made me appear damaged goods, or
right,
if people would think differently of me if they knew that I had spent time in the foster system as an infant. But now, at 52, it's just like, oh, maybe I can connect with people through, I don't feel ashamed about it at all. Like I know who I am, and
yeah,
that's part of my story. So that writing about my own adoption was the only part that kind of gave me pause. Like, wow, that's a lot to divulge.
right. But then also meeting your birth mother as well was another significant moment.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Any adoptee who's gone through reunion or has even thought about it, like I thought about it for decades, knows what a big moment that is. Like that's life changing.
yeah, and I imagine so. There's many people like myself who can recognize that power of what that is, of what
Yes.
that moment's like, and the anticipation and the even the quest. Although in my own case, the quest was pretty quick and easy. So
Yes. Mine too. Mine
yeah,
too.
yeah, same sort of thing. So and then you also did something because it's a memoir. You did change names to protect the innocent, right? You you did adjust that, right?
I did. Yes. And I did in several situations. I did for my son's birth mom and birth father because that's their private lives and absolutely. I changed theirs from day one.
Yeah,
I didn't change my birth mom's name until she read it and she asked for me to change it.
right.
And I was like, oh, of course, and all identifying information.
Yeah,
But then I will tell you a funny one that I feel like such a noob for not knowing this, but my editor read it just like 2 months ago, the final edit. And when I talk about these two girls in high school that had had sex, and so to me and my bestie, they were totally exotic because we hadn't yet. We were like, these girls are so exotic. They've had a and my editor was like, did you ask these girls if you can use their name about their sex life? And I was like, oh, no, should I change their names? And she was like, yes,
yes.
you should.
It's
She's
like
like, people
we're just announcing, we're just announcing to the world they're a little bit promiscuous.
in high school, like, to me, it was just, they were such nice girls. And I think they both ended up marrying those men. So to me, it was just whatever. But
Yeah.
it was funny, like the things that I didn't think of as a first time
Right,
mom.
right. Of course, yeah, because you were thinking like that they were exotic and they were powerful and
Yeah.
intriguing and yeah, worldly, all these things. Okay, so
Yes. Yes.
no, it's so funny. So I guess that's one of the things, and again, anyone who follows the concept of writing memoirs is you want to be honest and completely open, but you also may need to change things so that you don't identify people, especially if it's a situation where maybe there was something that hurts you, and you don't want people to be spotlit in a libellous way, in a negative
Yeah.
fashion, in a way that they can be identified. So that's an important aspect.
Yeah. It really is. And I remember when my birth mom came back and said she wanted her name and hometown changed.
Yeah,
And I was like, oh, what a bummer. Because the hometown was like, I had attached to it somehow that was true. And then I think I read in one of the craft books, or maybe somebody smarter than me said, if it doesn't change the story, who cares?
yeah,
And I was like, oh, exactly. It doesn't change the story at all. So
yeah.
if it makes them happy, absolutely no problem.
Right. Yeah. Cool. So the book's coming out in August. Can you just talk a little bit about what is the book when people don't know anything about it? How do you describe the book to them?
I say Matched is about my obsessive search for a baby to adopt. It was about a 9 month search and meeting the 8 potential birth moms that I met along the way. And each of those women, in their own way, changed my life. And prior to doing private adoption, I think part of the reason why the story was so shocking to me and I wanted to write it was I always thought that birth moms would be like what we're shown on TV, like maybe, a 16 or 17-year-old ingenue who, got pregnant on spring break or whatever. But the majority of women that I met were in their 30s. They already had 1, 2, 3 children at home. One was a MBA holding executive. Like birth moms are not who we think they are from what we see on television. So it was those women and how they changed my lives and then how they led me not only to my son, but then because of the experience of meeting them, it after decades of kind of wanting to meet my own birth mom, but being scared to do it, the process of meeting those women made me know that I absolutely had to try to meet my birth mom and see what her story was because I'd
Right.
heard so many crazy stories. Not crazy, unique, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
So your birth mother has read the manuscript. What
Yes.
about your son?
No, he is only 10
Okay.
and I got his permission to write it. I read the chapters that include him and his
Right.
birth story. although I struggle with that a little bit because he is 10.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But the story, his story, where his birth parents are involved, there are no names, and it's just the one chapter where,
Yeah.
he actually comes into our lives. So he will read it when he's older, but he hasn't yet.
Right. Okay. No, I was just curious about that because there are
Yeah.
certain things that you wait to share. So, yeah.
Yes. And he knows his adoption story. He's known it, we never didn't talk about it. So there was
Yeah.
never like a day that we told him. But there are definitely aspects, tons of aspects that are not in the book
Yeah, of
and
course.
only for him to know.
Yeah,
And
of course. Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah.
the thing is the memoir isn't blow by blow every single thing. It's,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, which ironically I did write it that way in the first draft. And
Right.
I just vomited everything out. And then, in later, draft 16, 17, 18.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. 10 years
Yeah.
of refining. All right, so
Yeah.
you and I, myself, podcast host, and Denise Massar, a published author, are having a conversation, and we're going to go back in time and talk to Denise, who has this concept of a book she was going to write and all of the goals and dreams. What sort of advice would you want to relay to young Denise?
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's such a good question. I would tell her, first of all, I would try to tell her lovingly, but that she would hear it. You are so prissy and snobbish when it comes to the concept of being an indie author. Open your mind. Open your mind to the possibility of there being life as a working author, a full-time working author, and you are not published by the big five. It took me like 8 years to get there. I would love to like hurry younger Denise along a little bit on that journey. The other thing I would say is, and this is great because I was just able to give this advice on Threads the other day to a younger writer who's freaking out because she wasn't getting her writing in. She has 2 young kids at home. And I would say to new writer Denise, everything within your reading and writing life will happen in seasons, but you will get it all done. Because when my first son was born, I didn't read for probably a year. And I'd always been a voracious reader. And I remember thinking, Mark, like, well, I guess I'm not a reader anymore. Like I thought that part of my life was over because motherhood was so freaking overwhelming. I couldn't imagine coming up for air and like reading a book. So there was a time when I didn't read. And then there was a time when one of my kids had a mental health crisis and I was in the thick of writing Matched. I mean, I was intense. I was writing every day. I was so into it. I didn't have to convince myself to write ever. And then my child needed me and I was like, well, full stop.
Yeah.
Writing just went away for probably 6 months.
Wow.
So it's so hard when you're a driven reader or you're a voracious writer to stop. But if you are those things, you will go back to it. You will go back to it. Nothing can stop you. If you have a book in you, nothing can stop you from getting out in the world. I can say because everything tried to stop me. Death, parental divorce, publishers didn't want it, mental health crisis, but it'll get there.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, you made it happen. So that is awesome. I want to thank you for hanging out with me. Where can my listeners find out more about you and more about Matched?
Probably the easiest place is denisemassar.org. That's where they can learn more about me and read some other essays I've written. And I always put my memoir recommendations on there. And I would encourage any of your listeners, if you have memoir recommendations, please contact me through my website and tell me. I'm always looking for a good memoir to read, always. And then I'm really active on Instagram, which is just Denise Massar is my handle. I'm trying to get active on Threads. I don't know how you do that. Again, I'm just at Denise Massar. And then my Facebook page is also just Denise Massar.
Awesome. And we will have links to all those in the show notes at starkreflections.ca. Denise, thanks for hanging out with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
There are a few things I want to reflect on from Denise's interview. And the first thing is, this is really important. I want to hammer this home. This is things writers need to know. If an editor or an agent actually makes a comment, more than one of those standard, rubber stamp, not right for us at this time, that means a heck of a lot. Most agents, most editors do not have time. Even editors on agented submissions have a lot to go through. So any feedback that they offer, any feedback that you get from an agent or an editor, any small praise really, really carries a lot of weight. The other thing is just how much Denise's agent believed in the book, that she was willing to give it another go, that the agent says, let's give it another go. And that's also something that's so extremely rare within publishing. There is such a mountain of material that agents and editors are drowning at, or looking in, or looking at, I should say, drowning in and looking at, that for an agent to give it another go the way Denise's did, 40 more submissions for the next year, and even took the effort of taking the strategy of giving the book a different name, to play with the way that the industry evolves and changes and all the shifts in publishing. That's huge. That is absolutely massive. And then the final thing to reflect on is Denise's advice that nothing can stop you. And that's really good advice for writers. And it reminds me of something that my friend James Owen, who says, and this comes from his book, Drawing Out the Dragons, if you really want to do something, no one can stop you. But if you really don't want to do something, no one can help you. So Denise's advice really resonated with me. How about you? What were some of the things that you were reflecting on while you were listening to the interview? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. You can email me, mark@markleslie.ca, leave comments over at starkreflections.ca, on YouTube, on the Twitter sphere, all those things. Love to hear what you're thinking and what you're reflecting on. But that is it for this episode of the Stark Reflections podcast. I want to thank you so much for listening to me. Giving me your ear every week means the world to me. I'm so glad you take the time to be a part of this. So thank you. You are contributing to the success of this podcast. Thanks so much. If you want to support the podcast, leaving a review of the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, or better yet, sharing an episode that you love, that resonated with you, with somebody that you think would find value in it, that's another great way to help me out. So, as I said, this is the end of this episode. And until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.